Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. You know the drill. We're retired New York City police detectives and 9/11 World Trade Center first responders. If you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, you're in the right spot. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you'll get all things DutyRon and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. Hey, before we get started, I want to say a special thank you to Lauren at Hidden True Crime. We've got multi-streaming to her platform. Hello to all the gems, the hidden gems as she calls them. Welcome here. You guys are always welcome in this community, as we are always welcomed in yours. And thank you guys all for being here and watching this important live stream. Today we're going to go over the Delphi case, the CSI and forensics. Ed Wallace, as you guys know, is a retired New York City police detective, first grade. He worked in the crime scene unit. He's a forensics expert. Ed has processed over 2,500 crime scenes in his illustrious career as an NYPD detective. And we're honored to have Ed Wallace. Ed, how you doing today? What's going on with you? Or what are you up to?
Oh, very busy, Ron. Very busy. My nephew bought a house, and I am assisting my nephew with making renovations and fixing up the house. And so the last couple of days running around, doing all kinds of work and getting supplies, laying on my back, putting in, all kinds of structural supports and other things that were needed here and there, and taking care of all these issues.
Well, not only is Ed a forensics expert, he's also an architect. So he's ready to take care of any type of structural damage with new and old properties. So hit him up. Maybe he can help you out with your project. Ed, thank you so much for being here. Listen, we have a lot of questions. This case has been a long time coming. The trial, now the jury is deliberating 3 days, starting Monday will be day 3. A lot of people have questions about the evidence collection, about how the prosecution presented their case. Ed, we've gone over this many a times, but we're going to get into it tonight. Today, as it pertains to evidence collection, forensics, evidence preservation, and so forth. Listen, in this case, there's no denying there was mistakes made. There's mistakes made in a lot of cases that we covered. Ed, just before we show the first video and introduce our guest, Lauren, just talk just a little bit about crime scene and how different various scenes have these challenges.
Yeah, no two scenes are alike, even though you may think so. They're not. Okay, they all have their little nuances. They all have things that are unique to them. And the crime scene investigation is only as good as the investigators conducting the crime scene investigation. And that goes for the evidence they collect. The evidence they collect is only as good as the crime scene investigators collecting them, and the use of proper, standardized, validated protocols. Now, we use protocols for all aspects of forensics, whether it's crime scene investigations, ballistic examinations, your DNA, so forth and so on. And we have to follow these protocols, and the protocols are in place to create standardization and to make sure we do them from scene to scene to scene. Therefore, we don't miss anything or damage the scene. Just like doctors have an oath where they're first do no harm, the same oath applies to crime scene investigators. And as I said numerous times, we have Locard's exchange principle, and crime scene investigators are not immune to that principle. So we can be the source of adding things to a crime scene or accidentally removing them. We can't control what happens to the crime scene before we get there, other than the fact that we try to give training to all the first responders, emergency responders that are normally there before us, then and hope that they take in what we tell them and how to safeguard the scenes. But once we get on scene, then we take control and try to limit any contamination, cross-contamination issues, and alterations to the scenes that are unnecessary.
And we know from being New York City police detectives working in the city, and this is not suburbs, this is not the country, we face different challenges as it pertains to people coming into crime scenes. Whereas this crime scene location in Indiana was in the middle, it was on off of a bridge in a very rural, remote area. It was not easily accessible by many people, although it was accessible, but it wasn't like a New York City street where hundreds, thousands of people were walking by. Let's bring on our guest, Lauren from Hidden True Crime. She is awesome. Her channel, she's out there every day at the Carroll County Courthouse, fighting the weather in the beginning, and then she was able to get some line sitters, but she was there basically day in and day out. We've had her on once before. Her and her husband, Dr. John, they really have a fantastic channel, because what I love about them is they come at it from both angles and they give the facts. So it's always great to have a good friend in here. Lauren, thank you for taking out the time to join Ed and I for an interesting discussion.
Welcome, absolutely. Lauren. Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Ed. Thank you for being willing to have this discussion today. It's been great talking to you both this week. We've been sharing thoughts, we've been sharing questions, and I just am so grateful for both of you and your expertise to sort of break this down for us, because wow, it's been quite the journey for me and for all of us.
And I see all the hidden gems are in the chat and chatting it up, and I'm here for Lauren, yay. So there we go. Thank you again for all the work that you do and the time that you take away from your family. You know, a lot of people don't realize how stressful it is. You're a mom, you know, and to be away from your child and your husband, that takes a lot. That's a lot of sacrifice, but you're there for the right reasons, because what I heard you say just the other day is you're there to see that justice is done, no matter how it comes down, whether it's a guilty verdict or a not guilty verdict. And I thought that was an impressive takeaway, at least for me. It resonated with me, because that's why we cover these cases. Sometimes we have bad things to say about investigations and people get mad at us. But it would not be right for us to say that a good investigation was done when in fact not a good one was done. So I like that about you guys. You call it as you see it. Ed, this is going to be primarily your show. Crime scene evidence collection. Day 2 was a tough day in this trial. Lauren, you were there for almost every day.
Yes.
But day 2, you got to hear and see some of the crime scene photos. And the first, the gentleman Pat Brown, who was a family friend of the Germans, came across their bodies. Do you want to talk about day 2 a little bit before we get into the forensics?
Yeah, Pat Brown sharing. Is that what you mean? Pat Brown coming across and the bodies. He was a good friend of Libby's family. And that moment was heartbreaking to have him on the stand. He talked about how he had heard about the 2 missing girls on February 13th, and then nobody could find them. And so he decided to take work off the next day to make sure he could help. And, just shows what this town is. Delphi is a town that cares. And he took time off. He went to the fire station, which is where the command center was for searching. He went to go search. And as he gave his testimony, he explains how he started walking, and he parked at the cemetery, and he started walking down. And before he saw Abby and Libby's bodies, he actually saw clothes in the creek, and people were shouting that they had found clothes. And he was walking down, and then he turned over and looked the other way, and he saw the girls, the bodies. And he said, they looked like mannequins. He said, I couldn't believe it. And he started to break down on the stand. He actually got very emotional, remembering this moment of finding these 2 little girls with their throats slit. And it was a moment that was very difficult. And he explains, he shouted, I found them. But then they sort of, and then he went from there. But that was a hard day to be in there.
I described to Ed before we went live, and I did a little preview before we went live, and I talked about when I was a New York City police officer and going through the academy, they made us go to the New York City medical examiner's office to see an autopsy being conducted. And Ed, you remember this day probably as well. Group of us would go there together. It's like a field trip. And when you saw the bodies on the gurneys inside the autopsy suite, it was like the same feeling. I felt like it wasn't real. And one or two of our cadets and candidates almost passed out. Well, I think one of them did, if my memory serves me correct. But we sat there and we watched and we saw all of the workings of the medical examiner. So if you're just a layperson and you're not going from crime scene to crime scene, this is shocking to see. But day two is when it started, and you got to see the victims' families weeping in a courtroom because they saw again, if you suffer from PTSD, we're about to talk about a little bit of sensitive stuff here. You get the real feel of what a victim's family has to go through. And this is so many years later during a trial, seeing crime scene photos of their loved ones. It's like re-victimization, but you have to do it. The state has to present this stuff. But Ed, when we go into a trial like this, the defense has to break down. That's their job. The defense's job is to bring up doubt. And they've done a successful job. There's no doubt in this case that they haven't brought up doubt in this case. But Ed, I want you to talk quickly about crime scene evidence preservation. I have some notes here. No DNA found at Richard Allen's house or at the crime scene, including the cartridge. State DNA expert Stacy, I'm gonna butcher this, Bosanowski.
It's Bosanowski. I have to look it up, but yeah, it's okay. You and I butchered it both.
I suck at this at the names.
Just use the first name.
Yeah, Stacy. Thank you. Sorry, Stacy. The state's expert Stacy basically testified to that there was no DNA at the crime scene or at the search warrant location, Richard Allen's house.
No. See, even you, my esteemed colleague.
I'm going based on what I heard and read.
Right, but see, they said there was no DNA. That's not true. First of all, folks, let me just back up a little bit and tell you this. Okay. I've been classified as a forensic expert by judges and associations based upon my training, experience, and certifications, my education. Okay, I don't call myself an expert. Others call me an expert. Forensics does not take sides. It's either right or it's wrong. Okay, and I don't play sides because I work for defense attorneys and I work for prosecutors. Okay, I do the forensic science. I give the reports. I explain what goes on and what it means, and then I let the chips fall the way they're made. That said, what Moran said, there was no DNA. No, that's not true. They didn't find DNA is different than there was no DNA.
Okay.
I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up, Ed. And I purposely read that. I actually led you into that. Okay. Unbeknownst to you, I tricked you, Ed. I wanted to lead into that conversation because let's listen quickly. And this is only 2 minutes. I hate to waste time listening to news reports, but let's listen to this. This is what was reported on day 9.
Abby Williams and Libby German's final moments. An investigator testifying today to blood marks on Libby's eyes consistent with tears. That moment, stirring tears inside the courtroom from Libby's grandmother. Thanks for inviting us in. It's now 11 o'clock. DNA and blood spatter were the focal points in court today. The science of solving crimes, and this one more complicated than most. Our Emily Longnecker was in the front row during today's testimony, and she joins us tonight from Delphi to break down the biggest takeaways from day 9. And I want to warn you, some of the details that you're about to see in this story are hard to hear.
Today's testimony came from 2 different witnesses. The first testified about DNA found at the crime scene. The second was an expert on blood pattern analysis who testified about what he called a voluminous amount of blood, most of it, he said, belonging to Libby German, that was found at different spots around the crime scene. Major Pat Cicero testified he believes Abby Williams died in the same spot where she was attacked, saying there was no blood on her hands, something he said he'd never seen before, calling it, quote, very unusual. Cicero said Libby German was likely attacked close by, but at one point was, quote, moving and basically walking in blood. Cicero told the jury he believes Libby bled to death a short distance away from where she was first attacked, based on the large amount of blood in one spot. Cicero said Libby was later dragged a short distance close to a large tree, perhaps to try and make it harder to spot her body. Cicero also testified he believed Libby left a bloody handprint shaped like an upside-down L on one of the trees. His testimony and photos from the crime scene led to several jurors looking away. When Cicero testified that markings near Libby's eyes were consistent with tears, Libby's grandmother put her head in her hands and wept. Cicero told the jury it's possible one person killed the girls, but on cross-examination said he couldn't rule out that more people were involved. The state's DNA expert, Stacey Bozanovsky, told the jury she tested clothing from Abby and Libby found at the murder scene, skin cells from under their fingernails, and the blood from the crime scene. She testified she also tested several items from Richard Allen's home, like his blue Carhartt jacket, carpet from his car, knives, and the unspent cartridge found between the girls' bodies. Her conclusion, quote, Richard Allen's DNA was not found anywhere at the crime scene, including on the cartridge that the prosecutor claims came from one of Allen's guns. And Abby and Libby's DNA was not found on any of the items taken from Allen's home after investigators served a search warrant. On cross-examination, the defense asked Bozanovsky about hair from the crime scene, some the lab held onto to possibly test at a later date. Bozanovsky said the decision was made to not test them at this time. Defense attorney Jennifer O'Jay said, quote, but this is the time. Richard Allen is now on trial. After the jury was dismissed for the...
Okay, Ed, I'm going to stop it there, and I'm going to go to you on your take on that little piece right there.
Well, okay. First of all, this is reporting going on here. So the reporters hear something said, and they're interpreting it, and then they're delivering it to the people. But there's a twist to it because it's not as accurate as if if you were in court and you listened to it yourself and interpreted what was being said, if you understood. But the fact is here, if you take nothing away from today's show, take this away. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Okay. All it means is despite my best effort, or not my best effort, but the best effort of the crime scene investigators or the lab analysts, they didn't find his DNA. It doesn't mean it wasn't there. For instance, where did this woman swab these items that were submitted to her? Did she swab the entire article of clothing? I don't think so. Okay. Did she use an MVAC or was she just using swabs? Okay. And the same for the items that were recovered at the scene, the tree branch. Now, the clothing, some of the clothing was recovered from a creek. So that had issues with water, moving water running through the clothing, the shoe, and so forth. So any DNA that might be there may have been lost due to that. There's so many different variables here, all right? Lacard's exchange principle still stands. When there's this interaction, there's going to be a transfer of between the parties and the scene, okay? And then when you leave, you're leaving your presence there and you're taking the scene with you, okay? It's just that they didn't find it. Now, also remember, when they took these articles of clothing from the defendant, it wasn't days after the crime.
No, it was a long time.
It was a long time afterwards. A lot of time for clothes to be washed and things to occur. Now, in the case of nothing from underneath the fingernails, okay, no DNA there. Well, one of the victims rather, appears to have had, based on the testimony, restrained with her hands behind her back, given the lack of blood on her hands and the fact that she had such a horrific gaping wound to her neck. Okay. So there's a lot of different things going on here that would cause not to find the DNA. That said, I'm not saying that he did this, and don't take this the wrong way, because a lot of people seem to have like a vested interest in this, other than the fact that the interest should be the interest of justice. Okay. And justice for the murder victims and justice for the defendant. Okay. That's all we should be concerned about. Okay. Nothing else. But that said, we don't know how thorough a job was done on the collection of this. We don't know how thorough a job was done on the sampling for DNA. Okay. What I do have issue with is not sending the hairs off for analysis. I don't understand that at all. Okay. Once you collected hairs and fiber evidence, it should have been sent off immediately for analysis. Okay. In mitochondrial DNA or SNP DNA. I don't understand why it wasn't done.
And they spent so much money on this case. They talked about it, how much money was spent by the state. Why chintz out on something like that, where you can just send that out to a laboratory and have it done? It just blows my mind. Lauren, I know you got a lot of questions, and I know you're going through some of your notes, but this for me is this is a big one when it comes to this type of case. And they said they were going to throw everything they had at it. If you have hairs, why not test those hair and fibers? That could be a game changer, Ed. And you talk about it all the time.
Absolutely. It's unconscionable for me that the state did not analyze those hairs.
Yeah, and they had the FBI in there for a little while, and then Doug Carter, I think, dismissed them, or somebody dismissed the FBI, or they bowed out. I don't use, you don't really see that happen a lot. We had it with Rex Heuermann in Suffolk County, and that was for other reasons, we believe. But why would you take the resources of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and say, hey, we got this, we can handle this? That was another head scratcher for me as a law enforcement professional. The FBI has Quantico, and they have an unbelievable amount of resources that they can throw at these type of cases. And for them to be dismissed from it was troubling, to say the least.
I mean, there's a lot of troubling things with this case. I don't like some of the rulings from the judge, especially. I believe in equal justice under the law, right? And so if we're going to go with the presumption of innocence to the defendant, which is where that's what we practice here in the United States, right? An innocent until proven guilty. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. That said, the judge should not be limiting monies to the defense so that they can go out and get experts to conduct testing and analysis,
right?
Or review the work of the state experts. It should be on an equal par. Okay, I don't get that, and I never will.
Lauren, over to you.
Yeah, I do have some questions. I'm pulling out my notes. Look at this. October 28th, we have Stacy. So let me just share. You brought up the hairs because I do have a question about that. So, because when the you're the expert, Ed, when the prosecution was discussing this, it made sense to me. But of course, the defense kind of asked what you just asked there. So I just want to say what Stacy shares. I found it. So the FBI, so Luttrell explains that the DNA analyst, an expert herself, she sent 73 hairs to the FBI, 72, different hairs. And 3 of them identified were not conclusive to being Abby or Libby, right? Mm-hmm. And so 3 came back that they were interested in testing, but they concluded after this with options that the success rate for the rootless hair was very low and that it wasn't great technology right now. So thus it wasn't her decision, but they decided to hold on to it for hopes that there would be better technology to test it, because you can only test it once. It's this rootless hair. And if you don't get the result, you might not ever get the result, was sort of how she explained it. And I'm looking to you to help me sort that.
When somebody's life is on the line, their freedom about to be possibly taken away, or death penalty case, the SNP DNA could be used. Yes, it's going to consume the hair, but you're going to get a full profile. Okay, you're going to get the father and the mother, not just mitochondrial DNA. All right, from the shaft of a hair of the mother of the owner of the hair. Okay. So they could do SNP DNA on that hair. Yes, it's going to be it's going to get consumed, and it's one and done. It's one of those things that when you do this, there's no retesting the
Going
hair.
back. Yeah, there's no going back. So
Okay.
once you're testing it, you're testing it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So you're thinking, why not just do it? And they're telling us that they're afraid that there's not.
Listen, the lab that specializes in this, they're getting a lot of publicity because they're solving a lot of cold cases with this. Okay. Out of Texas, and what if they don't feel they're going to get that genetic profile, they won't test the hair. Okay. So, and they'll leave that there, and then the hair is still there, and it can be, maybe if technology changes in the future or methods evolve, then the hair can be retested. Okay. So, I mean, there's things that could have been done that weren't done.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah. 5 centimeters of hair is needed for testing and a low success rate. She wondered if DNA would improve one day. Her supervisor's decision was made. She didn't make the decision. But with the low success rate and only one opportunity, they chose not to test. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Can I add to this conversation? Lauren, you are looking at notes from the actual testimony in the trial, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I sat and I listened to Stacy and I took notes during this. Those are my notes from October 28th. Yeah.
And those are very critical because a lot of us are not getting to hear that. Of course, people are tweeting about it live as it's happening, but this, brings it all into perspective here. And again, it comes down to a decision made by somebody other than that person that was testifying, that expert. So everybody has their bosses. And as Ed and I know, we don't make all the decisions. It has to get approved by the powers that be and the supervisors and so forth. And in this case, that was what was made. That was the decision that was made. Ed, they talked about the dragging and where the girls' bodies were recovered. Early on in this case, they were talking about staging the crime scene. It was staged by somebody. How could one person drag 2 sets of remains? And can you talk a little bit about that, Ed?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of forensic evidence that can be found to support whether or not somebody was dragged from one position to another. If there are drag marks, there'll be transfer of the whatever the surface area was onto the clothing, and the clothing to the surface area. But they based. You're talking about the testimony of the bloodstain pattern analyst, and yes. He said that, based upon these large pools of blood, it appeared that one of the victims was attacked in one location and then dragged to another location where she succumbed to her wounds. Right. There was no indication that there was any like she crawled away from the attack scene to where she finally died, because again there would be evidence of that, especially under the fingernails and things of that nature. And there's based upon the testimony. Now all I can do is read synopsises of the daily testimony, and based upon what I've read, it appears that one victim was restrained. Because of the lack of blood found on her hands, given the wound to her neck. If her hands were free, after something like that, you would think that you would raise your hands to your injury and therefore get blood on it. And then we have a lot of arterial damage here, okay, according to the pathologists and so forth. So there would be, while that victim is alive, and please, for those who can't handle this, trigger alert, okay, that heart is pumping and it is creating energy greater than gravity and pushing that blood out of that open artery with each beat of the heart. And it's going to project, and it's going to have a certain pattern and so forth. And their analyst was able to find that information.
Yeah, it's difficult to talk about, but these scenes, I've been on many of them where it's nightmarish to see it, especially indoors, and this is outdoors. And I could, this is part of the area where they were found. So trees like this had the blood patterns on it. Ed, again, people just get caught up in when the defense does their cross-examination on these particular sciences. And we did it with, we had our expert, Dennis was on with us with Lauren, and we talked about those tool marks on the casing.
No, you mean Jimmy.
Jimmy, yeah, Jimmy, sorry. Yep,
Yeah.
my head's all over the place. When we had Jimmy on, and he was unbelievable. I know you reached out to him again.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. We're going to have another show with Jimmy back to discuss more of the ballistics.
No matter how much we explained it, I don't think people wanted to hear it from, you know.
Well, I mean, it's like, you know, it's like our society today. There's too much tribalization going on in our nation, and that has to stop. We have to become more united. And people have taken sides in this case, as in many of the other cases, whether it's this case or, you know, any of the other high profile cases that we've highlighted over the years. Yeah, there are camps of people. You know, the defendant is innocent. The defendant is guilty. Okay, and yeah, I get that, but it shouldn't get to the point where people become wild and unreasonable and are willing to attack someone who has an opposing view or a different opinion. Okay,
even if you bring a neutral opinion, it doesn't even matter. It seems like in this particular case, even if you are right in the middle, and I could say that you and I have covered this case from both sides of the spectrum, but we stayed even keel right in the middle, like, hey, this is good, this is bad. But at the end of it all, it's really about what the jurors come up with. It's not about what I think, what Lauren thinks, what you think.
No, well, again, the only thing we should be concerned with our criminal justice system is equal protection under the law, innocent until proven guilty, and we should all be on an equal playing field, defense and prosecution on an equal playing field. Okay. Right. And when it comes to forensics, okay, it's science. Right? It doesn't take sides. Science doesn't take sides. It's either right or it's wrong. And you can have difference of opinion amongst technical experts in the various forensic disciplines. Okay. You know, and if they are sincere in their beliefs and it is a legitimate belief or argument that's being made, then it has to be given some weight. Okay. Not just fluffed off or blown away because you've already made up your mind on which way this should go. Okay.
Some folks grab tunnel vision real quick, and I think that's also a problem as well. And I think all of human nature, we're all guilty of it at one time or another. People just get tunnel vision, and they just have they just want to believe one thing, and it doesn't matter what's said to them. I proposed on a community post, this was many days ago, and I don't know if you've done this, Lauren. I proposed a question: did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Richard Allen is guilty? Almost 5,000 people took part in this vote, and 73% said no, and 27% said yes. So that's just in my community. You know, most people didn't just come stumbling across my community posts. That's the Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace community, and that's what we got. Lauren, I don't know, did you do any polling like that, or did you try it?
You know, I saw Vinnie Politan's poll, and his was about 40-60, 60 innocent. You know, I haven't done a poll on mine. I thought I was going to, and then honestly, I got worried because of what you just said about polarization. And in some ways, I'm like, I don't want to find out that my community is any different than anyone else's. Do you know what I mean? I was like, I just want to keep sticking to what I'm doing and reporting what I'm seeing, and maybe that was an ignorance is bliss choice, but I chose not to do a poll. I just didn't want to know.
Ron, can I just highlight a question in the chat? So
of course. Okay. Ed, you're my co-host. You can do whatever you want.
All right, Stephanie. I don't think anybody's asked it. I didn't see it. If Richard Allen is acquitted and later evidence surfaces that he proves his involvement in the murders, does double jeopardy apply? And the answer is yes. But the feds can step in and charge him with a civil rights violation, where he could do time for that, just as they did with the Rodney King case in the LA beating. Okay, they were acquitted in court of the assault of Rodney King, and then they were brought to court on the civil rights violations and found guilty. Okay.
Thank you, Stephanie, for the $20 super chat. I believe that was on your end, Lauren, some of your super chats and from your folks. And shout out to the hidden true crime community, which is coming. You guys are always coming in strong. The ladies and gentlemen over there are engaged in this, and they are involved in the conversation. Lauren, I moved you up there because I didn't want that super chat covering you. I figured my face should get covered up rather than yours. Any questions, Lauren, as we get into the second half? We're only going to be here for another 30 minutes or so. Any questions?
Yeah, hit me with them.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of questions about the defense's gun tool mark. Their expert witness that came in to sort of contradict what Melissa Oberg did about tool mark analysis in cartridge. And of course, you guys already mentioned that was sort of what our last live was about. But then after that, you guys hit me with then the defense expert witness testified. So it kind of increased this conversation.
Well, yeah. Well, the last episode we did on the ballistics was how are these marks made? That's what our concentration was on, and what they mean and what they don't mean, and what can be said and what can't be said. Okay. Now, yes, there is the testimony of the defense ballistics expert, and I've gone through it, and my buddy Jim, ballistics examiner extraordinaire, has gone through it, and we have our opinions on it, and we're going to come back and do a whole show on that when Jim comes back, and then we'll have you on again, Lauren, because I can understand a lot of lay people getting confused with this type of evidence and the testimony and what it means and what it doesn't mean. And now you may have some conflict between the defense expert and the prosecution's expert about what was done and what wasn't done, if there's a match, if there isn't a match, which, and we're going to break that all down.
Okay, good. Well, can I just ask you this then? How about a little teaser? Is it apples to oranges, or is it apples to apples?
I think I said this before, and I'll say it again. I think it's apples to more defined apples. Okay. That's
what I took away from. I feel good then. That's what I took away. That's what I took away from the testimony. Yeah, if this is, then hear me out here. I'll just touch on this a little bit. You're not going to. Most people cannot replicate the amount of energy and force on the slide to create the extractor or ejector marks that are found on a spent cartridge case being ejected after it's fired its bullet. Because there's far more energy involved in the fired bullet, extracting and ejecting the cartridge than can be made by manually sliding, utilizing the slide to eject a live cartridge. Okay. So you're going to have tool marks on both, from extractors and ejectors typically. Right now, there are some examples where, if things are done very gingerly, you may have just very, very minuscule amounts of these tool marks. But if there are tool marks from hand cycling that have that can be identified and microscopically analyzed and documented, okay, and then there are tool marks on a spent cartridge cases fired from the same gun that was hand cycled, there's going to be more definition and more detail of the tool mark in the fired one versus what's there. But you still should see areas that are similar in both. Okay. Right.
Okay. And then they'll just be more detailed in the fired one versus the cycled one by hand.
Okay. Thank you. I'm looking forward to the full video, but thank you, Ed. Thank you.
There's so much more to talk about when it, as it pertains to this, and, demonstrations of, when you see someone racking a slide and the round ejecting out the live cartridge. again, the velocity of when a gun is fired, that velocity that the round comes out, it, as Ed explains, it's completely different. So
And there's also physics, a lot of physics involved here. Okay. And I'll just give you a reconstruction case that I worked on. Okay. With Jimmy.
I love to hear these stories. I love it.
I have ballistic damage in a hallway of an apartment complex.
Okay.
And I have witnesses that tell me the position of a shooter. And then I have ejection cartridge case patterns that are to the left and front of the victim, when most, in this case, it was a Glock 40 cal, would typically eject to the right and rear of the shooter. But now I have all these cartridge cases in a nice pattern, suggesting that they were fired in and around the same time and so forth, but ejected to the front and left. Okay, so I have a question I have to answer. So what do I do? Using the scientific method, I have the recovered firearm, I have the ammunition. I'm not going to use the evidence ammunition. I'll get the same ammunition, okay, manufactured by the same company, okay, and I'll use that same magazine, that same gun. I'll go into the range. I developed testing, and I test fired holding the gun in its normal way. And every one of those shells, after 3 series of test fires of 15 rounds, each magazine, ejected to the right and rear.
Okay.
Now, I changed the position of the gun, loaded up the magazines again with the same ammo, did 3 sets of tests. I rotated the gun gangster style, as you see in Hollywood, all right, where the ejection port is now up here on the top, on the side, as opposed to over here on the side. And guess what? All 3 tests, 15 rounds go to the left and to the front of me as I'm shooting. And I got it all on videotape. I created the same patterns. Okay. This is how you do reconstruction. This is how you use the scientific method. This is, you formulate a hypothesis, you test your hypothesis, and then it has to have, in order to be valid, repeatable effects for anybody else to do what you did.
Mm.
So in other words, the state's witness, Melissa Oberg, knows what she's talking about.
Well, I looked at her testimony. I didn't see anything that jumped out of me as out of standard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Jimmy is going to have his say on it as well.
Okay.
Right.
And then also, she was peer reviewed. Now, people attacked me when I said she was peer reviewed, but she testified that another examiner blindly looked at these things and came to the same conclusion.
Right.
It was the president of, what's the organization called?
AFTE.
NAFTA. Yeah, it was the president that verified her results. Peer reviewed.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
good. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the standard practice for latent fingerprints, for DNA, for all of this. For ballistics, is that once an analyst makes a conclusion, they're going to give it to somebody else, and those people are going to, without influence or without knowledge of what the findings were, conduct their own analysis, and then they compare to see if they came to the same conclusion.
Okay.
So somebody in the chat, and I don't like to get derailed by the chat, and I love the chat. I love the live chat. You guys are what is the heartbeat of these live streams. Somebody in the chat said it was her boss that peer reviewed her. But Lauren, you heard
What difference does it make?
It was her boss who also happened to be the president.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
It
what
was
difference does it make? She didn't prejudice her boss as to her findings. He did the test. That is the standard for this analysis. Okay. And for those who keep saying it wasn't blind or it wasn't peer reviewed, it is. This is the standard. This is what's done.
The boss would care even more because they want to make sure she gets
Listen,
it right.
Here's another thing, folks. I know we're getting into my other show, though, but this is an accredited laboratory
Yes.
that did this analysis. They're accredited, ISO accredited, and to get accreditation, that means all of your protocols and procedures, all of your analysis have to be validated and meet the criteria for accreditation. Any
Right.
deviation from the practice, the standard practice, or the validated protocols that occurs in the laboratory has to be reported, and they could lose their accreditation.
Right. Yeah, and so people don't really
Right.
take that into consideration as well. They just again, the blinders go on, and they're like, "Oh, everybody's corrupt, and everybody's on the same page, and they all want to come to the same conclusion." I don't buy into that at all because,
don't
like you said, Ed, these are professionals. The prosecutor's office are professionals. We've dealt with prosecutors and been in and out of courts our entire careers, and I've never yet run into a prosecutor that says, "Hey, let's bungle this case. Let's have a collusion here. Let's do this." It just doesn't happen. Anyways, it's the last 15 minutes, so I wanted to go to the chat, Lauren, if you don't mind. I know you got a bunch of folks in
Let's
your
do it.
chat.
Yeah.
I want to just acknowledge the members in the super chats real quick. I'll run through them as quickly as possible. Ed is always looking at the chat, and I love when Ed gets fired up because, I mean, he takes this stuff. Look, he trains, he goes across the world. He doesn't just go across the country. Ed teaches forensics and different. I've attended one of Ed's training sessions up in Rockland County, New York. And on day 2, I had to go home. I had to pack my bags. It was too much information for me. But seriously, folks, I stayed and I recorded as much as I could because some of it was sensitive information. And Ed Wallace and his team of forensic investigators, they're second to none. They do unbelievable work, and they train people from around the world. Thank you,
Here's
Matt.
another okay, good.
Go.
No, I say somebody posted junk science. It is not junk science. It has been tested. It's been validated. It's gone through all of the NSA, the National Academy of Science stuff. The NIJ sunk a lot of money into validating this, and they did blind black box studies, and the error rate is lower than many other forensic disciplines.
Right. Yeah.
In the examiners. So please, you people are saying things. I don't know who you are. I don't know what your background is, but it's disheartening to hear this.
Right.
Well, that's
again,
why I wanted to ask you, the expert. You're the expert, right?
Yeah. Mick Spunky gifted a Hidden True Crime membership. Some of the stuff is from your side, so thank you for that. Thank you. Yeah. Tina sends in a super chat and says, "I don't see any benefit to the families being in the courtroom while sensitive pictures and videos are shown. It's way too traumatic. They have the option. The district attorney tells them on day 2 or whatever day we're going to show crime scene photos. They're given the option. They don't get blindsided by this." So Tina, I know you're from that looks like Canadian. Here in the United States, the prosecutor's office tells the family what's going to happen. They don't just hit them with the crime scene and not give them any notification. Sarah, thank you for the $10 on your end. This is Hidden True Crime. Ed, what if Abby was resisting / avoided getting the big sister new hoodie bloodstained as she died? That's a conversation. I don't think we played that, Ed, but Ed, you're shaking your head. You want to answer it?
Well, I think if you're dying and bleeding out, you might not be thinking about not getting blood on your big sister's hoodie.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's another one from your side, Lauren. Tidy girl. For Ed, why didn't they collect branches and twigs and use the MVAC on them for DNA? And you mentioned that earlier in the show. Thank you, Taiji girl.
Yeah. I believe they did collect some, but I don't know if they did MVAC. I would prefer MVAC on surfaces like that, and large articles like a hoodie or clothing or a shoe or whatever the case may be. It's most likely going to get the best results if DNA might be on there in small quantities. You're going to get it a better chance at getting that DNA out with that system rather than swabs.
The MVAC is a fascinating tool. It's like a DNA vacuum, Lauren. If you don't know, we had the owner of MVAC, Jared Bradley. He's from Utah. His father created the MVAC to in the wake of the outbreak, the E. coli outbreak of Jack in the Box, and his father wanted it to be used to help save children because a bunch of kids died from eating E. coli laden hamburgers from Jack in the Box, and he invented this machine so plant managers and meat packing and meat distribution places would use it, and they all said, "Get the hell out of here with that."
Just one thing on those sticks that you mentioned.
Okay.
If you saw our previous episodes on this, they collected them days later. No, they should have collected them the day they processed the scene.
And they did collect them after. Yeah.
Yes.
That was disappointing.
BS, thank you for the $10 super chat. That's on our end. Graciela, also a member of our community, but this comes from yours, Hidden True Crime. Thank you for the super chat for Lauren. Good to see you all, and thank you for the hard work always. We appreciate the respect and tireless dedication to the victims and their horrific crimes. The victims and their family is what this is about. When you talk about these cases, Graciela, you know from being around here in both sides, it's about respect for the victims and their families, and we always keep them in our hearts and in our minds when we talk about these cases. And we don't sugarcoat anything, but at the end of it all, we respect these folks. And you see that not just the families, Lauren, but you've seen members of the community who are really hurting behind this horrific crime.
Really hurting. This community's never been the same since 2017.
Stephanie, from your side, I think we answered this already. I'll cover myself up with that one. $20. Thank you for super chatting over on Hidden True Crime. Crystal, I'm hooked, sends in $2 and says thank you from Carroll County. See? So there you go. We got folks that watch all over the globe, but we have locals, and my heart and my prayers go out to Crystal and the community there for a peaceful resolution to this when the verdict comes down. Emily, who has been a member for probably 5 years here, 4 or 5 years, and is a member, she said, I missed my 16 months with Lauren.
Yay, we love Emily. And I actually met her at CrimeCon a couple years ago. So
yeah. She met Jared Bradley, the creator's son of Dan Beck, and she had socks on. She sent me pictures of it. So
okay.
Swigs on your side became a member. Thank you for becoming a Hidden True Crime gem. I'm a member as well. Ed, so are you. You don't even know it, Ed. We're members.
Yes.
Kelly Ray sends in the $4. This is on our side. She says, do you think Abby could have fainted at the sight of her best friends being slaughtered, rendering her unconscious? Ed?
That's always a possibility. I've seen horrific incidents where people fainted over less.
Yeah, we had, again, we were rookies in the academy. I had one person in our company. There was 2 that were, taken back by the medical examiner's day, but one fell out. And then they warned us. They said, if you fall and you pass out, you're going on this floor. And it was not a nice sight on the floor.
Well, I had one hurl in the autopsy suite.
Into the Tyvek suit. Yeah, that's always a good one. Here's from your side, Deja Vu. Do you believe he committed the crime? I do believe he committed the crime, but I don't think that they proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Jury has a hard job, and judge made many mistakes. I agree that the jury has a difficult job, and I'm not convinced that they proved beyond a reasonable doubt. That's just my opinion. Don't hold it against me. Don't come at me. But that's my opinion, and I feel like they did show reasonable doubt. Massage Girl from your side, $5. Thank you for sending in a super chat to Hidden True Crime. In other cases, they can trace the bullet to batch where it was produced, when and where it was purchased, et cetera, et cetera. Why not in this case? I know you have to correct some of the English on this, Ed. So
let me read it again. Hold on. In other cases, they can trace the bullet to batch where it was produced and when and where purchased. I don't know what part of the country she comes from, or if she's even from our nation, but I'm not aware of that unless they have the lot number for the box that the ammunition came in.
Right, bullets aren't serial numbered. They're not
right.
Identifying.
There's no identifying markers on the cartridge cases or anything that brings it back to a lot number and a date of production.
Yeah. So Curious Kiwi, who's a member, thank you, from New Zealand, Kirora. Great friend. She had the rotator cuff surgery after I had mine, so we were pen pals back and forth. she was showing me all the food her husband was making her, and usually it's the other way around. So kudos to hubby for making you food while you were down and out. She says, Ed Wallace, it's been 7 years since the event. If they didn't test that gun until recently, will the gun make different marks if it's been used in that time? And also curious, Kiwi, thank you for being a member. Ed, you want to take it?
Well, it's a little confusing though. Put it back up.
The gun was recovered during the search warrant. What was that, Lauren? 2022?
I think what she's asking, I feel like I've kind of learned a little bit. Like, would the individual class characteristics be different if the gun's 7 years old, or the subclass characteristics? Could they change over that amount of time? And so thus markings.
Well,
be
that would
different?
depend on it again. If it wasn't used between the time it last tested and now, and there wasn't any damage to the ejector, extractor, and so forth, then we should be able to get similar results that the analyst got.
Yeah, and that was stated in court, by the way, too, by the
Yeah.
prosecutor of the question. So thanks for asking that. Curious,
L.
Kiwi.
Waters, I believe from our side, thank you for the 10. She's a member. She says, we love Lauren, and I'm so glad for your take on the bullet evidence. Thank you. This is great reporting. Thank you so much for that. We appreciate it. And thank you to Ed for taking out time. His weekends are busy. He's always doing stuff. So thank you, Ed, for taking an hour out. Mama she's also a member here, but this is coming from your side. Love the collaboration. Mama She 13 is a great, great friend of Crime Time with DutyRon, and I know she's obviously a channel member at your spot too. So thank you for that. Yes. Beamer 650, not only a channel member, but a moderator here. And her sister, Lexi, is also a channel member and a moderator. Many prayers for DutyRon. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I have to interrupt and just let our hidden gems know that we're going to add our prayers to prayers over on your channel, because we hope that everything goes well for you Wednesday and that you're going to get good news about this cancer. And we're thinking of you. So hidden gems will be praying as well for you, Ron.
Yeah.
Sending good vibes.
Thank you, Lauren. You have a beautiful community. It almost mirrors ours, because I see the kindness in your community, and I thank you for that. I'm just sad that we haven't crossed paths sooner, because I would have liked to have been intermixed and intertwined with your community sooner. But hey, well, here we are now. So
Here we are. Right.
Now, I want to just say one thing about reporters.
Good question.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead, Ed.
You'd have to ask the local police about why they did that.
Yeah.
Take the FBI off the case. But
That's from your community right here. Thank you for this.
Sometimes I've sat in courtrooms on high-profile cases here in New York, where I was hired as a forensic expert, either for the defense or the prosecution. Because many times I'm allowed to sit in the courtroom during the testimony of certain witnesses, so that I can feed the defense attorneys or the prosecutor questions to ask the witnesses on the stand.
Mm-hmm.
And I sit through a whole day's testimony, and I come back home, and later that night I watch the local TV news, or read the local rags on the internet. Now I don't get a physical newspaper anymore. But and then I ask myself, was I sitting in the same courtroom these people were sitting in?
Yeah, right. I know.
We
And
all view things through a different lens. Each one of the lenses see things differently.
And it's just amazing. It's just amazing. And again, it's based upon your education, your experience, your background, what you do for a living, your religion. All these things have an effect on how you interpret things.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And no two people see things the same way.
No. And
okay.
No people see things or absorb things the same way. You could talk to somebody till you're blue in the face. They may not get it, or they may get it. So,
but you can.
We have hung juries.
But you can tell when someone has a bias.
Oh yes, yes.
In their reporting, okay, you can tell immediately. And those people that report with a bias are not reporters, in my opinion, anymore. They're now advocates, okay, or propagandists.
Yeah.
But in any event, they're doing a disservice to the community with their reports, because what ends up happening in a lot of these high-profile cases is that the average Joe citizen who's not in the courtroom, not following the case, is listening to these news reporters on TV or on the internet and reading these articles, and they come to expect a certain outcome.
Correct.
And when they don't get that outcome, then you have rioting and looting and vandalism and so forth in many of the high profile cases.
Yes.
Okay. And so the reporters have a very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm having a brain fart here, but their job.
Yeah,
what's that?
I said, glad I'm not the only one. I forget words all the time.
No,
so
no, they have a high responsibility to report things accurately. Okay, because when they have a bias and they report things with a slant, okay, they are now creating disinformation and getting people riled up. And their responsibility for what happens afterwards. They are responsible for what happens afterwards in many cases.
It's unfortunate, but that's what we see, and it's nothing that we'd be able to correct. But it's just something that I would advise people to not just join the masses, to use your own mind and think with your own set of eyes and your own set of ears, and absorb the information and then weigh it out, because so many people are too quick to go with this. So, Ed, you got something up there for?
If that's your takeaway, I'm sorry that you feel that way, and that's, you know, we can respectfully disagree. Okay.
Yes.
We can respectfully disagree. Okay. And if you have an expertise in an area and you disagree with my expertise in an area, or the expertise that others have given me in an area, and just tell me why. Okay, yeah. I don't agree, and this is why. Okay, no one said you have to agree with me or you're biased. Where'd you get that from?
All right, let me reel it in. I want to close it up. Hedgie Mom, on your side, Lauren, she says, was the green scarf found at the scene ever forensically tested? Did that come up? Did the defense ask about that green scarf? I think they did, right?
Yeah, you know, it was speculated that the green scarf might not have even been a part of this crime or this case, and they could never even actually prove that it was with any of them.
Graciela Gracie G says, Ron and Ed together with Lauren from Australia. There you go. We appreciate you. We thank you. And here's another 2 from your end. Same thing. So thank you for that. I want to also acknowledge Simmer Down from your side, $20 from Texas. Thank you for your service, Ed and Ron. Well, no, thank you. And he thanked you as well. Lauren.
Thank you, Texas. Thank you.
You know, look, I think it's important that, you know, and I want to thank you, Lauren, for taking out an hour of your time. I know you've got a lot on your schedule. You're doing a lot of different things, and, you know, you're away from your family. I think it's important, though, that creators come together and understand that there's going to be all different sides to stories like this. But what you're doing, I think, is a good thing, and it may or may not make people happy, but you're right there standing in the middle and just saying, hey, I'm going to give you a bird's eye. And the amount of time that you've given your audience and other people who choose to listen and, you know, just watch is unique, because most people that are going and covering these trials, it's either one side or the other. And Ed and I have chose to stay and cover it. I think you and your husband, although we'll all at times give information out that people won't like to hear, because it's our perspective, and I respect yours as you respect mine, and that's how it should always go. But unfortunately, it's not a level playing field, and then people want to, you know, again, point fingers and say, oh, you're doing this and you're doing that. But it takes a lot of time and effort and money to travel and do these things. And you guys aren't on your podcast saying, hey, give me money, give me this, give me that. You're just reporting it, and you're taking out your time, and time is valuable. You're away from your child and your husband and the rest of your extended family. And I respect that, and I thank you for it. So I think that's my main thing that I wanted to say to you. And I'm always here in your corner to help provide with Ed and all of our experts that we have in the field of investigations to answer any questions, or even come as a guest on your show anytime. And I'd love to have the doctor on with us Ed?
Absolutely. Yeah. John says hi to both of you. And it does mean a lot that you two have both been in touch with me through this trial. It's been difficult. And just the support of the community and from both of you has meant a lot, has kept me going. You guys have been really encouraging. So I just want to say that from behind the scenes, both Ed and Ron have given us a lot of support, and it's been hard, guys. I've had hard days, and they've both told me keep going, keep going. So
You can see it when
thank
you're
you.
reporting, Lauren. I mean, it's hard to hide emotions when you're reporting on emotional stuff like this. And you're a mom, and you know
Yeah.
that these are two teenage victims here that were brutally murdered. And to talk openly about it, it's hard. It's not easy. And like some people say to me and Ed, how could you see this stuff and talk about it and not get emotional? It was part of what we did as our jobs. So for you, this is not normal stuff. So when you're seeing these hardcore crime scenes and evidence and back and forth, it's very emotional. Ed, you got something up on the screen? What do you got from New Jersey Robin?
My friend New Jersey Robin, she asked, could the water have washed away DNA? Absolutely, on the clothing. Yes, it's a moving stream. If it's skin cells that are just resting on the surface of the article of clothing or the shoe, yes, it could have washed away. If it's blood, same thing. It could have diluted to the point that you're not going to, see it or get it.
Right. Thank you for that. The super chats just keep coming in. We're going to get ready.
Ron, I got to run.
Yeah, all right, Lauren, do I have permission? Wait 1 second, Ed. Don't go.
Yeah. I'll say goodbye to Ed, and I'll hang out here for a bit.
Do I have permission to show your channel on here?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right, so here's Hidden True Crime. We're subscribed. Ed, hang out just 1 more second. Make sure if you go subscribe and you click the all button, because if it goes personalized or whatever, you want to get all of the notifications. And look at that. Look, me and Ed and Lauren are on
There we are.
live. Holy shiitake mushrooms. Ed, thank you for taking out the time. Lauren, we'll hang out for another 5 minutes if you got it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ed. Thanks for bringing and sharing what you know.
Wallace,
Good seeing you, Lauren. Thank you for sharing all that information.
Without your final words, I'm going full screen with you.
Okay, folks, I wish you all thanks for being here with us. You can get your true crime fix anywhere in the internet you like, but you chose to join us. Thank you for that. Always be safe, be prepared, and watch your six.
Bless you, Ed. I'll see you
Take
soon.
care.
Thanks for hanging out. All right, there he goes, Ed Wallace. Just you and I got to be over here. I'm always on the left.
And that's okay. And to our hidden gems, go subscribe to DutyRon too. If you're here watching our channel, we really appreciate what DutyRon, which includes Ed and Ron, do in our community. So thank you for bringing your law enforcement background to us.
Thank you, Lauren. And you know what? I want to just say this too. We cover many cases. You've covered many. I'm wearing a shirt here. This is the Gabby Petito Foundation. I don't know if anybody noticed it, but I support victims and their families. And we just in June of this year, I didn't know I had cancer, but I had it. I went and did a fundraiser for 3 hours at the Gabby Petito Foundation out in Suffolk County. I brought my laptop, my microphone. My brother came. Ed joined me remotely, and we raised over $7,000 for them in 3 hours. So Gabby Petito Foundation is, these are folks, the families, 2 separate families on both sides, mom and dad, stepdad, stepmom, and they are just advocating for victims and trying to help others in the name of their, in the name of their daughter. So it's an awesome thing that we do here. But Lauren, just my advice to you is, again, go out there, keep doing what you're doing. You have your community, you have your husband and your family. These, we're always going to get people that have a difference of opinion, and they'll express it accordingly. Sometimes it'll be expressed nicely and sometimes not, but you're doing the best that you can, and you achieved what you wanted to achieve. You're out there, you're going to be there hopefully for when this verdict comes down.
Yes.
And I can't thank you enough for doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, to my hidden gems, I am still here in Delphi. People have noticed, still at my Airbnb. So here I am on Sunday. Tomorrow, verdict watch continues. Of course, we don't know if there will be a verdict tomorrow. We hope there will be. While it is a holiday in the United States, that doesn't mean that they won't continue deliberating. So that is happening tomorrow. And here I am, still here. I hope to be there.
Awesome. I love it. And if there's anything that Ed and I can do, we're just a phone call or a text away. Just reach out to us. I want to thank everybody for super chats. There's some that we might have missed, but I got to go because my wife is stepping on the floor, telling me dinner is ready. So I want to thank everybody for being here. The super chats that we may have missed, you guys are awesome. It's completely not necessary, but you guys do it. I want to thank you for the memberships, for the moderators, the replay viewers, the super chatters. You guys are what makes this a great place. We give thanks and praise to each and every one of you for subscribing. It's free to subscribe. When you watch our videos and let the ads play, it's a free way to help support the community. So we thank you all for being here on behalf of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace and Lauren and the Hidden True Crime, as she calls them, True Crime Gems. I love that. I don't know why I love that so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
They
it's
are
all,
gems. That's why I was like, this is perfect. John and I thought about that when we started this channel. We thought we would delve into what's hidden, but what we have uncovered was a treasure. Our gems have been the brightest spot in this
I love it.
heartbreaking world of true crime. So they are definite gems.
I can't get enough of the goodness that I watch, the bits and pieces that I've seen of you guys because of everything that's going on with me. But I do watch. Like I watched that last show that you did with your husband, and I thought that was with Dr. John was great because he, really talked about the confessions and he talked about a lot of stuff that we didn't. I like to keep these shows about CSI and forensics. I like to stick on the topic and not go off. But I have a lot to say about that too, and I agree with him wholeheartedly on those confessions. And I know that people are saying it was under duress and that he was being tortured and forced. But that completely isn't the truth. So we're going to, keep following it. I hope for justice for these families. And I want to thank everybody for being here. So stand by for a message from our cop team. And if you're not yet subscribed over here to Hidden True Crime, definitely do that. And I thank you for taking out the time, Lauren.
Thanks, Ron.
All right. Good night.
Good night, guys.